I'm Piercy Janewell, and you're listening to Unsubscribed. Every episode, I sit down with business leaders to help you question everything you thought you knew about marketing. If you enjoy this show, please do subscribe and leave a review on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. Now, on to this episode. My guest today is Mychelle Mollot. Mychelle is a true master in her craft. She has ascended to the highest levels in marketing and has held the coveted CMO position at large, established companies, as well as small, exciting startups. Currently, she is the CMO at Solace, a real-time streaming company, where she is responsible for all aspects of marketing, strategy, and operations. With over 25 years experience in marketing leadership, I feel extremely fortunate to have both worked for Mychelle and now have her on our board of advisors at NAC. So super excited to have her on as a guest today on the Unsubscribe podcast. Welcome, Mychelle. It's awesome to have you.
Thanks, Pierce. It is awesome to be here.
So, I've done a little bit, I've known you for a long time, and I think that your career actually started doing gold exploration in the Yukon. So how did you go from that to get into marketing?
Yeah, I was trained as an engineer. My specialization was geophysics, so I was doing gold mining. But I had a knee injury that made me have to rethink my career. And ironically, when I was looking for a desk job so I could have I needed reconstructive knee surgery. And when I was looking for a desk job, a couple of companies that were in the geophysics space contacted me and said they were looking for people in the marketing department. I went, well, I'm trained as an engineer. I have zero background in marketing. But they were very interested because it's hard for really deep technology companies to get marketing people who can really understand the depth of the technology. And then it's hard for technologists to be able to write and to be able to communicate. And I had a deep background in communications because I had done debate club at school and drama, and I had been part of something called Project Magazine in engineering school, which was a creation of an engineering magazine for engineering students. So I was responsible for finding advertising for the magazine. And so I actually had marketing in my background, but I didn't even know that I did. But the people that were coming after me and were interested did know that. So they were connecting the dots. But what happened with a local company called Cognos, they had reached out to me. I had applied to be a programmer there, which I wasn't really qualified to be. But they had my resume on file. And 2 years after I had applied, they pulled it out because they were looking for people in their product management department, which was really just marketing at that time, doing market requirements. They asked me if I wanted to come for an interview. I told them the same thing. I don't have this background. They said, come anyway. And they hired me on the spot. So I started more in product management, then moved into product marketing because I loved product marketing. And then I never looked back. And that's how it all started.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you took both your technical skills and your communication skills and kind of combined them into one. And we have a lot of marketing ops people on the podcast, and I love hearing people's stories of getting into marketing because it's never seems to be a direct line. It's always an interesting background.
Yeah.
So we're actually interviewing for a lot of marketing positions at NAC right now. And I always ask people, what are your career goals? And inevitably, a lot of marketers say that their career goal is that one day they want to be the CMO. And so I would love to ask you, what was your experience getting there? Was that your career goal? And what do you think were kind of some of the big steps along the way to getting there?
Yeah, I would not say it was my career goal per se. I've always been more interest-based in my pursuit of career, meaning I just would do things that I was really deeply interested in. And so I wouldn't say I stumbled into it necessarily, but I just kept on increasing my scope of interest. So I started in product marketing. I got interested in analyst relations, and I actually lobbied the company that I was with at the time, Cognos, as you know, to start an analyst relations program. And then they said, yes, go for it, start it. And then from there, I was very interested in PR. So I asked for that responsibility and learned what PR was all about. So for me, it's always been interest based. And I think when I give people advice on career, I say, try not to make a position necessarily your goal. Think about what that position requires, and then seek to learn what that position needs. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of how I pursued it. But I think the most important thing for somebody who wants to be a CMO is that you have to understand strategy at the core. It doesn't matter what area you're coming from. If you don't understand marketing strategy, business strategy, how to connect what marketing does to the business, then it'll be very hard for you to make the leap from a functional marketer to a CMO.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that you kind of were following your passions, and as a CMO, people are always trying to call and sell you things, I'm sure.
All the time. All the time. Multiple times a day. I could give a lot of advice on what not to say.
Yeah. And so I mean, I really like how you were following your passions, your interests, and in doing so, you were actually learning about all of the different elements of a marketing department.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so I guess, is it about just being open to those opportunities, or seeking those opportunities out? Like if there are other marketers out there, what advice would you give them to being able to get that experience?
Yeah, I think early in your career, you have to be willing to take lateral moves. I think people get very obsessed with progression upwards, and then that kind of ends up limiting them in the long run, because then they progress in a very narrow way. When you're early in your career, if you want to get experience in another area, you're not going to be able to say, well, let me run that area, right? You have to say, no, let me move into that area as a junior and work my way up once I master that domain. And so I think taking lateral moves to learn new domains early is important. Once you get a certain level of experience and you move up the food chain, then I think you just ask. Just ask. I'm really interested in taking on this function. And then once you take on that function, you have to show that you're capable of doing that, for one, that you have the desire to learn that function, that you have the leadership capabilities to run something that you don't necessarily have the domain expertise to run, right? You have to give the leaders confidence that you can do that. And the first one's the hardest. But once you do that, then they realize, okay, look, you're humble enough to know that you don't know that domain. You're curious enough to know that you're going to ask them, and you're going to do the hard work after hours to really learn that domain, in addition to just being a good leader. And then once you show it once, then, just ask. Just ask. It's kind of that. Sometimes it's just that simple. You just ask. I want to include that in my experience. I think it can offer a lot. Have the reasons why you think you can offer a lot to it from a leadership perspective, and then just show that you're willing to do the hard work to master it.
And how important do you think the environment you're in is to being able to get those opportunities? Does it require a certain company culture to be able to get to make those lateral moves, or to have a leader who really believes in what your skill set is?
I mean, yeah, I think it does matter a lot. Some environments are very rigid. They put boxes around people. The environments that I seek out are ones where they believe in a person's ability to learn. So they measure more your aptitude, your hunger, your energy. And then if you have shown that you have those three things, then they're willing to give you a chance, and then it's up to you.
And if someone's sitting there thinking, Mychelle, I don't know, am I in an organization where there's boxes put around me, or is it me? Like, what are some things that people could look for? Or what, if they are in sort of this more open mindset, what are those signals that maybe their manager understands that?
I think a good signal is when the manager pushes it back to them to actually say what they really want. I mean, I've been in many situations where somebody will say, well, I want to understand what my career path is here. And I'll just say, well, no, don't ask me. I will push it back to them. What do you have interest in? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? And then it sends a clear signal. Look, we're open to this, but you have to do the hard work of deciding what you want to learn. What do you want out of your career? So I think if you get that signal from your manager, then you're in an organization that is open to your movement, but it's also incumbent on you to do the hard work of figuring out, what do you want to learn next? What do you want to do next?
Awesome. And so I think, yeah, a lot of people kind of aspire to this position, whether, maybe it doesn't even align with their interests. And I think a lot of people might not even know what a CMO actually does every day. So I'd love to hear more just from your perspective on, what does a typical day look like? What are you doing as CMO, and what are kind of the most important skills that you need to have?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it in thirds, I would say about a third of my day I spend with my peers, so across the functions, understanding the business, what's going on in the business, understanding deals, customers, what's happening in the technology, the partners, all of that. So it's about, a third of my time is spent on that. And you have to have deep understanding of the business to be a good CMO. There's just no doubt. You can't do a good job if you just stay in your marketing silo. So that's about a third. Another third of my day is just helping my leaders, making sure that I remove roadblocks. I help them with maybe it's, people issues, maybe it's functional issues, maybe it's just domain understanding, that kind of thing. And then the other third is, it's my own stuff that I need to do to add value to the business. I'm a very hands-on CMO, and I think to be successful in today's world, you can't just lead and manage. You have to actually understand the business and contribute to the business. So things like messaging, positioning. I carve out time out of my day to do that. So it's about a third.
I was just reading a study in Forbes, and it said that the CMO has the shortest tenure of any executive position. It's a tough job, and I think CEOs always want faster growth. It's probably never fast enough. What are some of the hardest parts of the job, and how do you balance those growth expectations with reality?
Boy, that is such a hard thing to unpack, Pierce, because there's so many layers to this. But I think the hardest part of the job is communicating to other people in the company what you're actually doing. So you mentioned setting expectation. That's really important too, but it's also explaining what we are doing in our strategy and how it's going to play out, right? And most people think they understand marketing, but very few actually do really understand modern marketing. So for example, when you say, okay, we're going to launch a campaign and have a bunch of programs associated with that campaign, a marketer knows what that means, but a CEO or a product person doesn't. They think, oh, how hard can that be? They don't understand that maybe many dozens of ads, the many dozens of landing pages, the complexity of the nurture streams, all of the social support that goes with it, all the messaging and positioning work just to get to that pithy little statement that you have at the top of your landing page, right? That's hard work, as a marketer knows. So I think it's really important to communicate that in a way that really makes people understand, because what I've experienced is that it's very easy for people to undervalue the effort that goes into it. And when they undervalue the effort that goes into it, they expect much more out of you. Well, why can't, and how hard could it be? Why can't we do 10 more campaigns? So that's one. So being able to make sure that they really understand the complexity. So we have operational reviews where we'll dive deep with people. Look at this nurture stream. Look at how complex it is. Look at all the work that went into creating it. So it seems very tactical, but it's important. You don't do it for everything, but you do it at least, once a year to give people that are really important to your decision making and your budget allocation that view. The second thing that you pointed out right from the beginning is, how do you set the right expectations? And there, I think it's first having the right expectations yourself. I think we always overestimate what we're going to get out of something. And it's trying to be as realistic as possible while setting as positive an expectation as possible, but not falling prey to the back solving of the numbers. So often what I've seen is, and I won't say which companies I saw this the most in, but okay, you must do this much pipeline. Here's your number. You must do, this many, leads and MQLs and whatever. Being given the numbers and then being told, and okay, you have no more budget, and you have no more people. And then people just signing up for that and saying, okay, and then putting fake numbers on the board because they're being told this is what you're going to have to do. And as a CMO, you can't sign up for that. A sales leader would never sign up for quota they didn't believe they could achieve. But marketers sign up for it all the time. And sometimes it's because they don't actually have a deep enough sense of the metrics that they're working within or for, but they need to be experts in the numbers, because they need to push back and say, no, with this budget and this many people and this frame that you've given me, I can achieve this for the business. That's what I can do. Not the other way around, thou shalt achieve this, which is often how it's done. So I put a lot of it back on the CMOs, and I think that's why there's such a high turnover, because they're not pushing back appropriately.
Do you think a top-down goal can work if the budget is open?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you told me I need you to achieve X and you didn't limit my resources that were available to me in the budget, I think that's work well. Within reason, right?
Yeah.
There will be an X that is unachievable, but it's definitely then doable versus, or potentially doable versus, achieve X, but an X could be, 3 times what you did last year, but no more budget, no more people. In fact, we're going to squeeze your budget and we're going to, tell you to let go 2 more people, right? Those scenarios, I think a lot of CMOs have lived through.
One other thing I just wanted to dig into that you mentioned is this idea of kind of internal marketing. So explaining to the rest of the company what marketing is doing. I think it can be easy to get caught up in that, hey, we're marketing. Our job is to tell everyone else about the company and everything. When you think of kind of external focus and internal, how do you divide your time, and why is that internal? Well, you touched on why it's important, but maybe just why you divide your time that way.
Look, I just think if you don't spend enough time on the internal communication of what you're doing and why and how complex it is, no matter what you do, you will be viewed as not as successful as you actually are. It's hard for people who don't understand to really understand the amount of work that goes into it. So, you you don't want your team demoralized because somebody in the sales team says, oh yeah, well, okay, 10 new logos, but it's only 10 new logos, how hard could that be, So you want everybody to be in the same boat. I think most people understand that building product is complex and it's hard, and they give a lot of, sort of credit because most people don't believe that they understand how to build product, right? So if the product team says, well, we're going to deliver it by this time frame and it's very complicated and whatever, everybody goes, yeah, okay, yeah. But when a marketer says that, everybody thinks they know marketing. Everybody thinks they undervalue how hard it is. So you have to explain to them. Otherwise they're just going to chip away at the team's morale and confidence continuously. And to me, that's really important. I don't want my marketing teams to ever feel like they are second-class citizens in the organization. And product and sales are often kind of viewed by themselves as being superior functions or more important to the success of the business. And as we know, being lifelong marketers, it's critical to have marketing at that peer level. And if you don't, the business will fail. But if they don't believe it is, the business will also, it may succeed, but the team will fail in terms of morale because they'll feel like they're second-class citizens. Yeah. So that's why I spend a lot of time on it, Pierce. Not because I want to, honestly, I'd rather spend every ounce of my energy externally, but this has happened to me over and over and over again. And I've learned to believe passionately that it has to be part of the mix.
Yeah, I think it's a super important piece of marketing leadership that is often overlooked. I wanted to touch on something you said because, everybody is a marketer. Marketing is so subjective. Everyone has an opinion. I'm sure you have your own strong opinions of how marketing should be done. So what I'm curious about is how you coach your marketers as a CMO. How do you resist the urge of getting into the weeds on how things should be done? Or maybe you do get into the weeds. And can you just share a little bit more about your approach to coaching your team?
It really varies depending on the seniority and the function, but I think there's a big difference between getting in the weeds and asking questions for understanding, right? So to me, getting in the weeds would be, okay, you need to, for this Marketo campaign, you need to do X, Y, Z. And I want you to do it this way. And I want you to have this static list. And, that to me is getting in the weeds, right? That's telling somebody not just what you want from them, but how to do it. But if I ask questions about what somebody's doing, that's not getting in the weeds. That's helping me understand, one, what they're actually doing, but also, do they have an understanding? Do they need help? Because, if people believe that when somebody's asking them questions, it's not to out them or to make them feel uncomfortable. It's to see what their level of understanding is and to identify what areas they might need help in. So I don't do that very often with my leaders because most of my leaders are fairly senior and they're not in the weeds themselves necessarily. But I do ask questions in skip level interviews or skip level meetings where, it might appear to be in the weeds, but I'm really assessing how is that person doing functionally? Do they really understand their domain? Do they really, do they need help? Because at the end of the day, I want everybody to be working at their maximum abilities, and if they're not, then, we can help them. But if people keep everything like this and don't let people in and don't let them ask questions, one, they're not getting the benefit of other people's perspectives because they may have a different way of doing things. And two, the leaders aren't getting a perspective of, are they really in control of their domain?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we have a lot of marketing ops people, in the audience and that we've had on the podcast. And I think we've always had marketing ops, but it hasn't always had like an official title, an official position. I'm just curious, when you look at marketing ops over your career, like how has it changed marketing? And where do you see what are kind of the other big things that are changing, you know, whether it's technology or the way that we structure teams that you think will have a big impact on the future?
I think the biggest change I've seen in terms of marketing ops is that, earlier in my career, it was kind of an not optional area, but viewed optionally. I didn't see it as optional. I mean, Cognos was one of the first companies to have a closed loop marketing system. And we were very early users of Eloqua, but a lot of companies didn't view marketing ops as not even important, just they didn't even know about it, right? So it's kind of this, secret sauce that some companies had that a lot of companies, didn't factor in. So that was kind of early on. And then as it got to be more and more of an important domain, you'd see how people would sort of treat it as the stepchild's like, oh, it's not very important to us. It's like the evil, what do you call it? In Cinderella, it's like that bad, you're not treated well. You're just put on the side and do your thing, but you're not integrated into the operation of marketing. And now what I see is best practices, at least from my perspective, are, marketing ops is just core to everything marketing does. It's not an afterthought. It's not a separate thing that you do over here. It is everything. It's a foundation. So that's how I describe it. When we started this journey at Solace, the marketing ops or the foundation that marketing ops delivers was not even in existence, really. It was sort of piecemeal. Yet Marketo existed, but there really wasn't this concept of building a foundation, a technical foundation. So that's how I view it. It is integral to everything marketing does. It's a foundational layer. It should be put at the beginning of a planning process, not at the end. And I don't see that changing. I see it accelerating.
Yeah, that's really good insight there. Big part of marketing ops is campaigns, and obviously a topic that's near and dear to my heart and Nax as well. We're seeing a big emergence of these kind of campaign operations teams that are being set up as their own functions and organizations. And I would imagine as part of your typical day, building campaigns is not, something you spend a lot of time on, but it's something that your team likely spends a big portion of their time. So I'd love to hear more, as the CMO, what are you thinking about when it comes to campaign creation and what's most important to you?
I think there's sort of three things when I think about campaigns. One is that they be deeply connected to the strategy of the company and deeply connected to the strategy in marketing. So, one-off campaigns to me are a waste of time. So that's kind of step one. Make sure that it's connected to a strategic framework. We have a campaign framework where we are at Solace, and, we have sub campaigns, but they're all connected. So that's one. Make sure we don't do any random acts of marketing, as I call them. And there's I think the bigger the company gets, the more likely you are to do random acts of marketing. So, it's having that discipline. Is this part of our quarterly strategy, our yearly strategy? If the answer is, well, not really, it's kind of a one-off, then the answer from my perspective is, no, we're not doing that. We'll double down somewhere else. And then the second thing is making sure that it is full cycle. Campaigns without a thought to how do you report on them is really insufficient. And I know it takes a long time to get there. I get that, but once you get that frame, everything should be built out with a view to full cycle to how are we going to analyze and report on that campaign. And 3, making sure that, conversion optimization is baked in from the beginning, not at the end, because a lot of people tend to go back and how can we optimize this? Well, okay, that's good. You should always optimize, but making sure that it's optimized as best it can be going in and doing that hard work for the campaign right out of the gate is sort of the third area, I would say.
One thing that we see a lot in companies and marketing teams is a real focus on proficiency. So how you can scale things, how you can do them over and over again with repetition and precisely. But then, and we know people have really invested into that, and it helps with the volume. But kind of the counter effect to that is creativity. I feel, and we hear all the time, now marketers have this super efficient system, but it does not really account for much creativity. It's kind of taken the creativity away. So how do you, as the CMO, try and balance those two things?
This is like that the old push me, pull you. It is a constant battle to balance both those things because, at the end of the day, you can have the most efficient campaign. It can be, you can have all the reporting on the back end, but if it doesn't grab you by the throat and pull you in because it's not creative, it's not going to be successful, because it's the creative side of marketing that really is the difference between good and great. So that's and it's not easy though, because getting things to be efficient takes so much time and effort. So getting things to be great through the lens of creativity applied to, the ho-hum is a discipline. And I'm always, trying to figure out how to free my team from the road activities that will allow them to spend more time on creativity. It is constant. It's a constant effort. And for sure, look, plug to NAC. Absolutely. What you guys do helps us to do that. There's no doubt, and then I'm always looking for other ways, other areas where we could slim down the efforts that people put in on stuff that at the end of the day is not really going to make the difference between good and great outcomes. But a headline, a beautiful image, a creative turn of words, those can make a huge difference.
I love that. Yeah. I totally agree that they are kind of push and pull, and that finding that balance is what I think everyone is after. And at NAC, we're trying to make that a little bit easier. You mentioned that you're on Marketo at Solus, and a lot of people are like, well, those Marketo builds emails and landing pages. How come you decided to use NAC at Solus?
Does Marketo build?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. So we have people who are capable of making Marketo do those things. It is not easy. They're very specialists type people. We have people that we want that are more field-based marketers, that are more creative-based marketers. We want them to be able to do that. And that's what NAC enables us to do, right? It takes that, it empowers them with the ability that person who's got those specialized skills can do without them having to do that. And back to your point about creativity, then that gives them the ability to apply their creativity directly in situ instead of it having to go through a single person all the time. it really scales. It helps us scale our business. That's kind of scale, creativity, expansion of possibilities to people who are at the coal face of the business, doing it day in, day out.
Amazing. So I want to go into kind of a rapid fire section of the podcast. We ask this to everybody. The first one is, what's one marketing trend that you would unsubscribe from?
Oh, God. Anything to do with Web 3.0. Anything to do with Web 3.0.
Is email dead?
Absolutely not.
At NAC, we're big proponents of work-life balance. What do you do for fun?
Anything outdoors. I hike, I kayak, I ski, I snowshoe.
Nice. We'll be doing some of those winter activities pretty soon here.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Canada. Who is one person that you admire in the business community and why?
I admire a lot of people in the business community, but I would say the founder of Patagonia, Yves Chouinard. I have deep respect because great product, incredible work-life balance for his people, and fundamentally, what he just did, gifting his fortune, is it's just something. It's so aspirational. I can't think of a leader I admire more.
That's awesome. Love that example. You've already shared a lot of great advice, but is there one piece of kind of career advice that you think could help others?
I would just come back to what I said at the beginning. Don't think too much about positions. Think about what you want to learn, to do, how you want to grow as a human and as a marketer. And then the positions will come. It's a little bit of trust you have to have. And also think about what those positions do, because I've encountered so many people who get to a certain position and then realize, well, I don't really like just managing people, or I don't really like being in a big company. I like doing things. I like being creative, and that goes away the higher you get or the bigger a company you're working in. That'd be my parting comment. Be careful what you ask for.
Great advice. One last one. Who else do you think we should interview on the Unsubscribe podcast?
Oh, great question. You're more focused on ops, right? I think you should interview a total non sequitur type of person, Anne Handley. Like just interview a total creative powerhouse.
Yes. We actually have had Anne on the podcast.
Oh, have you? I'm sorry, I missed
one
that.
Of my favorite guests that we've ever had on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I love it because there you go. If anyone else is listening, check out the Anne Handley episode.
Yeah, and I'm going to check it out because I haven't watched that one. I'm going to check it out because I love her. She's so creative and amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely someone that I have learned a ton from over the years. And
me as well. Yeah.
I think has a great perspective on marketing and how to connect with your audience. Mychelle, this has been so much fun. As usual, every time I speak with you, I learn so much. We've heard about your journey into marketing, how you followed your interests, which eventually led you to becoming CMO, a little bit of insight into what CMOs do every day, what they care about, what challenges they have, and what they have to think about, including marketing, their own marketing internally. We talked about operations, we talked about campaigns and the important role of creativity in marketing, and how NAC is helping solace empower their marketers to be creative. Thank you so much, Mychelle, for joining us today. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Pierce. It was great. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Unsubscribed, a podcast created by NAC. If you enjoyed this episode of Unsubscribed, be sure to subscribe to my podcast and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. If you have any feedback or want to chat, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter at marketing_101. Cheers.